Welcome to our Vendor Refunds mini tutorial. This tutorial will guide you through processing vendor refunds in your Accounts Payable module. A vendor refund occurs when the vendor sends you a form of payment instead of providing you with a credit on account for future purchases or services. There are 3 steps to processing a vendor refund. First, a credit memo is entered. Entering the credit memo reduces your payables amount like it would if your vendor issued a credit instead of a refund. Second, a debit memo is entered. Entering the debit memo posts the transaction on the vendor account to show receipt of the check from the vendor, as well as it increases the general ledger cash account balance. Third, a deposit bank transaction is entered. Entering a deposit transaction puts a reconciling item in your bank reconciliation. Let's start with step 1, entering the credit memo. We entered the credit memo by going to Accounts Payable, Invoices, Credit Memos. We select our vendor and we apply to open credits. If the credit memo is being posted to an invoice and a purchase order is associated with the invoice, you can enter the purchase order number at this time. You can add an optional credit reference. We enter our date and the amount. Enter the distribution account number. When you're crediting an invoice, the account number is usually the account that was debited when the original invoice was posted. When posting to open credits and the vendor has a default posting account assigned, that account will automatically populate the field. When everything looks correct, we can post the credit memo. The credit memo will debit accounts payable and credit the general ledger account you specified. For step 2, we go to Accounts Payable, Invoices, Debit Memos. We select our vendor and we apply to open credits. We can enter a purchase order number if applicable and add an optional debit reference. We enter our date and then the amount. In the account number field, you want to enter the cash account the refund will be deposited into. When everything looks correct, we can post the debit memo. The debit memo will credit accounts payable and debit your cash account. The net effect in the general ledger is an increase in the cash account and a decrease in the general ledger account that you specified. The last step that completes the vendor refund is entering the bank transaction for the deposit. Remember, the bank transaction needs to be entered, so there will be a reconciling item in your bank reconciliation. If you do not use the Sage BusinessWorks bank reconciliation feature, you can skip this step. To enter the bank transaction, we select Cash Management, Transactions, Enter Bank Transactions. We select the transaction type of deposit, and we select the same cash account that was used for our debit memo. We enter our amount, and we can enter a description. We select our date. Now, most importantly, you want to uncheck the Post to GL checkbox since the debit memo has already posted to your cash account in the general ledger. We select Post and answer yes to continue without general ledger posting, and the vendor refund is complete. To see how these transactions affect the vendor, we will look at the vendor account. We select Accounts Payable, Reports, a detail report. We can select the vendor the refund was processed for. You will notice the debit memo and the credit memo have washed each other out. Another report to look at to see how the general ledger was affected is our journal report. Select General Ledger Reports, Journal Report. For Include What entries, we can select our specific posting date range. For the journal, we can select to see only the accounts payable. Here you can see that when we posted the credit memo, it credited the account that we specified and debited the accounts payable. And then when we posted the debit memo, it debited our cash account and credited our accounts payable. So the two accounts payable entries have washed each other out. This concludes our vendor refunds tutorial. Thank you for joining us.